How's it going, everyone? Nick from Comic Culture here. It is time for another episode of Nick at Night, my weekly non-spoiler comic book review show. Oh my gosh, I got through all these books this past week. Let's get into them now. I'll tell you what I thought about them next. Stay tuned. All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, give me a like, share with some folks. And I want this to be interactive. If you read some stuff and you want to tell me what you thought about it, go down below into the comments and do that there. If I missed something in one of these books, have a question or anything, let me know down below in the comments because I do respond to everything and it's awesome to hear from you all. So let's get into all these books we read this week. We're going to start over in the big two, as we always do. We're going to go over into Marvel first with Punisher issue number 2. And this book was really it really kind of cemented what we thought was happening in this whole series. It did kind of explain why the Punisher is doing what he's doing in this book. He's teamed up with some shady folks. We get the understanding about why they did that, why they pursued him, what's in it for him, what's in it for Punisher, what's in it for this other organization he's with. And I did like that, a little exploration there. I'm glad they explained it all in issue number 2. We got some introductions of some other threats that are going to be in the area. The art style did change from section to section, which I thought was interesting. And, I forgave the art in the second issue. The first issue, it seemed like it was too weird. It was real shiny. Wasn't a whole lot of detail. Wasn't a whole lot of line work. I didn't really dig that art style. It worked in issue number 2 because I think it was just a little bit different. There wasn't giant fighting splash pages. A lot of history lessons. A lot of how we got to this current state are in this issue here. So we do get a little explanation of what's going on. And like I said, we get a cool little tag at the very end about somebody else who's now going to be introduced into the series. That should really stir the pot. So I'm more excited about Punisher now than I was after issue number 1, although I was pretty excited after I read that issue. Didn't like the art. I forgave it in this issue, so I can't wait to see what happens next. All right, next we're jumping over into Thor issue number 24, extra sized, huge issue here. Got the Daniel Warren Johnson cover because you got to get Daniel Warren Johnson covers whenever you can. Now, I will say that this book has a couple different creative teams on it, and it will read as if these stories are kind of isolated. They're singled out. It does take place, it starts right after the last issue, and we all know what kind of happened in the last issue. If you've been keeping up with Thor, big battles, some casualties and things like that. This is the repercussions of that. And we start off kind of like the next day after the big battle with the God of Hammers. So what you do get in this one, though, is a couple other stories. They seem a little bit disconnected at first, and then as you read, you realize everything is connected. So don't treat this as, well, I don't like the art in this next little section. I'm going to skip it and go on to the next section, and maybe I can kind of piece things together. No, go ahead and read the entire thing. It is long. I think it's worth it, though. I do like the art shifts here and there. It's just a cool way to kind of ingest different art styles. It kind of catches you off guard a little bit because I didn't quite expect it, or I wasn't anticipating that when I got this issue, but I am glad that I stuck with it and read all the different stories because it does touch on a few different people, and the ending is great. I do love that a lot. There's a lot of cool, single panel moments that have a lot of weight and gravity to them, and I thought it was really interesting. And there's they're grieving in a threatening manner. Oh, they're grieving in a threatening manner, which I think is pretty cool and intense, man. When you're going through something extremely traumatic, you're kind of angry at the world and you're daring it to come at you, come at me, bro, kind of a moment. So we do get that in here too. And then we also get some intimate moments with Thor in here. And so I'm excited to kind of see what they do with this character going forward, how they're going to explore that. We do get a nice little cool cliffhanger surprise at the end. What does this all mean, kind of a thing. So if you're picking this up and you think it's just a bunch of separate stories that don't really connect, go ahead and blow through all of them. It's pretty interesting, and it's got a cool little cliffhanger at the end. Next, we got some Rom V on Carnage issue number 2. We got that Del Auto variant on here. Awful page quality. That's the first thing I'm going to say off the bat. Super flimsy. Not a big fan of that, but this issue was pretty cool. It does pick up with Carnage. He's kind of teamed up with this serial killer who's really into posing the bodies and things like that and takes pride in that. But he's kind of on this amateur type level. So Carnage is kind of his mentor at the moment. And Carnage is trying to make him a little bit like worthy of possession, of being the host to the next symbiote. It's kind of an interesting little relationship. Carnage has his own plans, though. He has his own ways of making his own self evolve in a way. Can he kind of take over the powers of other people? So he's exploring that a little bit. He wants to evolve, and it's interesting because in the Venom run, we're also dealing with evolution of the symbiotes. Like, what's the next level for a symbiote? Like, what's the Super Saiyan 2 for a symbiote, right? So both books are kind of dabbling in that a little bit. Artwork is great in there. It is very grotesque. It's weird. I do like the characters they're introducing. They're kind of like C-level villains almost in a way that they're bringing into this book. So that was kind of cool. I do like it when they introduce some people we don't see very often. So that's got it going for it right here in this book. Again, the art's really crazy. I think Rom's writing is spectacular on this book. I do like where it's going. I'm more interested in this than I am Venom at this point, which is a little bit sad because I like Al Ewing as well, but I don't like Brian Hitch's art. I am digging this book a little bit more than that book. We're on to issue number 2, though. We'll see where it goes. All right, the highly anticipated Amazing Spider-Man number 1. We got Zeb Wells on here. We have JRJR on here, and I got the Gleason cover. I probably should have got a cover A as well, just because it is what it is, you know, just to kind of have it. If it's still at the shop, which I'm sure it probably is, they ordered tons of them and a lot of shops did, I might go back and pick it up. This book starts off with a mystery. They introduce you, first couple pages, they introduce this grand mystery and they have this time jump that happens and everything seems to be different in Peter's life. He's cocky, he's dismissive, he's treating people around him a little bit differently. Everyone seems to be a little offended by him. People very close to him aren't really happy with how he's been behaving. And everything's kind of coming to a head. So emotionally, all of his relationships are kind of falling apart right now, which isn't that unusual for Spider-Man, but it seems like something else is going on as well. And that's interesting. We do get Tombstone in here. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler. He's in the solicitations and whatnot. Tombstone was portrayed pretty well, I would say. He's interesting, what he's trying to build. There's a gap right now with Wilson Fisk being gone. Events of Devil's Reign kind of set all that up. So there's like a power struggle right now going on. And so he's trying to get the forces together and trying to make their moves and everything, which I think is pretty interesting. We really only get about one battle scene in here, and it's pretty quick. Other than that, we have Peter kind of catching up with some folks around in his life, and they're all kind of upset to see him. They're kind of giving up hope on him, which is kind of disturbing. And I didn't really see that coming. The art style, I'm not the biggest JRJR fan when it comes to how he portrays characters, the faces, the poses, things like that. But it does work from panel to panel here. Occasionally, there's a little bit of humor in this book, which you'd expect, but not as much as you would typically see in a Spider-Man book. I think this one has like a lot of weight to it. There's something going on, something bothering everybody, and we haven't quite gotten into it yet. So, I know this book was on the fence for like a lot of people as far as how they felt about it. I'm interested enough to kind of keep going with it and see where it goes. Like, what is this big reveal that they're going to be exploring in later issues? I don't think John Romita Jr. is going to be on the art forever. I think he's only on for like the first arc or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see how it reads after that when the art shifts a little bit. So yeah, I'm going to be in on it on the long haul, I think. I want to get into some Amazing Spider-Man. This might be a good place to jump in, but it's just rather confusing, and that's all on purpose. All right, there's a lot of X books that are coming out lately. I went ahead and picked up this other one. This is from Teenie Howard. This is Knights of X issue number 1. Got that little Scotty Young variant right there because I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't think I was going to enjoy this book, and I was pretty much right. I'm not too interested in like the Excalibur kind of thing. I don't like all the different mutants and the X-Men and things like that going back into like a Game of Thrones time and dealing with all those threats and that kind of language and that kind of a setting and that scenery. So this book really wasn't for me. I will say the art was at least decent, which is cool, but there's a lot going on with like Captain Carter and everything. And so there's some like Bizarro Sentinels, and it's like kind of old timey, and they're putting together the band. It's like the Round Table, and there's lots of Merlin and King Arthur references and stuff like that. That's just not something that I'm interested in. But if you're into that kind of lore, if you want to see your X-Men's hanging out in medieval times, then this might be the book for you. Just didn't really do a whole lot for me, and I wasn't too invested in the story. They build their team. Everyone seems to be building teams. X-Men Red, they're building teams. In this book, they're trying to build teams. In Marauders, they're building their teams. It looks like everyone's kind of starting from scratch. It's like, who wants to join this band we got going on right now, and we're going to do some stupid thing. And so who wants to be on board? Everyone's like, yeah, sure. Let's just go ahead and do it. We're not doing anything else. There's nothing exciting going on in Mars or anything like that. So let's go ahead and get together. I don't know. Didn't really dig this one. I like the other ones better. Let me know though. What did I miss in this book that was super great? I don't know. Let me know down below in the comments. So guys, that was it for Marvel. We had a few. We're going to dip into DC next, starting off with Joker issue number 14, the book we thought was going to be the last book in this run. But guess what? There's another one. So if you thought that the story was too long already, you got one more you got to go through, and it's written by James Tynion IV. So you do have that continuity at least. So that is good. Went ahead and got the B cover because I do like that one. This one does wrap up pretty well. It does kind of play out the final scene we saw with Vengeance and Joker and Jim Gordon and an unnamed person that I don't want to spoil the story about. But it does kind of wrap that whole story up. It does give you a little bit of a mystery about what actually happens to Joker at the end. And so that's kind of how this one ends over here, is kind of like, what actually happened? What did Jim do? Did Jim pull the trigger and so to speak? So it was at least intriguing. I felt like it started strong as a series. It started strong. It started to trail off about midway through. You could have probably cut out 4 or 5 issues out of the middle of this run, and it would have been a good run. I think the last couple issues have been good. This one was supposed to be the closer. We got an extra one for some reason, so we'll see kind of how it wraps up. But I will say that it's probably 4 or 5 issues too long. Interesting premise, very interesting premise. The conclusion didn't really nail it home for me yet, but we have one more book to go, so we'll see how that turns out. The next book from DC is Swamp Thing issue number 16. Thank God this book was extended from 10 issues to 16 issues. Rom V. We have Perkins and Spicer on the creative team for art. What a great, great book. This is a really good example of a book that can really, really draw great backgrounds, great perspectives, just impossible scenery. If you flip through this book, it's absolutely gorgeous. The coloring is insane. I just don't know how they do it, but this book is really interesting. So it's kind of touching back with Green Hell a little bit, that came out a long time ago. I think we're still waiting for the second issue, if I'm not mistaken. In that book, they do talk about the green, the rot, the red, just these different paradigms, right? These different constants in nature. In this book here, they introduce something a little bit different. This is like the mechanicalness that the humans can create and bring into this book. And we have this new developed villain that was kind of cobbled together based on some experiments and whatnot. And his backstory is really rooted in railroad working and slavery. We got introduced to this character a long time ago in the first run, or in the first arc of this book. And so I do like what they're doing with here. He's talking about the iron glory and things like that in Jericho's Rose. And it's just like this cobblestone, this cobbled together, insane iron work, these gears and things like that. So it is pretty interesting. It's like the Industrial Revolution. So he's creating a whole nother paradigm. Meanwhile, we still have Swamp Thing trying to recover from what happened in the last arc, which has ended on issue number 10. So we got introduced back into what he's up to. He's trying to let go of some of the past. If it's strong enough, it'll kind of plant itself again and come back. So he's trying to get reoriented right now, getting some help from Jennifer. And so it's been a really, really good run. And the art is spectacular in here. Lots of cool little battles. And if that wasn't enough, we get introduced to another type of an avatar right towards the end. And that avatar was born in a really, really interesting way, and I can't wait to see where it goes from there. So a lot of new concepts, a lot of new things are happening in here. Swamp Thing is getting back on his feet. He's got a new emerging threat, and then another new emerging threat. Completely opposite ends of the spectrum, though. It's going to be fun to see. Are they allies? Are they going to team up at all? What's going to happen over there? Can't wait to do it. I can't believe we only have a few more issues left of this. They introduced a lot of cool things in this book, and they're going to have just a few issues to kind of wrap it up. I wish it was an ongoing series, but Ron V has his hands in a lot of DC properties right now, and so he's going to have a lot to juggle, and I can't wait to see how this one ends. The Industrial Horror, it's called. Swamp Thing number 12, great read. All right, another giant book from DC this week was Justice League issue 75, The Death of the Justice League. I'm going to show you something you can't unsee. So if you don't want that to happen, then turn away right now. This bottom half right here, if you can see it in the reflection, that is a sentinel head. Not really, but that's the sentinel head, right? The forehead, the nose, the 2 eyes in a way. And then if you flip it upside down, it's DC giving you the finger. That's what it is right there. So No DC hate. I'm just noticing that was like the first thing I saw. I saw this cover and I'm like, wait a minute, that's a middle finger if you flip this thing upside down. And Superman's the middle finger. What the heck, man? So was the book good? Is the build-up worth it? I will warn you, I did not read Justice League Incarnate. I did read Infinite Frontier and all that. And I've been a little bit lacking on the DC side. I have read some of the Crisis events and things like that in the past. This book feels like a lot of the other Crisis events that we've had before, just kind of retold. We have the Great Darkness swallowing up different universes or multiverses right now. We have our heroes teleported to a central location to take on the giant threat. We have the antimatter chamber. We have Pariah. We have all these familiar faces from different events taking on impossible armies, and it doesn't turn out well. This book is called The Death of the Justice League. So what happens in the Death of the Justice League? I don't want to give it away, but it's kind of the same thing as the death of Doctor Strange. They're going to die. Now, how they died in this book, it was very, very quick. It was very kind of like a copycat way of doing it, too. We've seen this method before. We've seen these panelings. We've seen these exact same things in past events, the way that they actually die or how they portray that they died in this book. And then the very, very end, there is somebody to kind of carry the message back. It's like, we had this group of people, they were all slaughtered. One guy's managed to get away somehow. He lands somewhere and he's the guy that's going to be telling everybody else that's left on Earth that the Justice League are indeed dead and they have to formulate their plan, get their ranks together, and figure out what to do. Everything about this book made me go, wait a minute, that reminds me of this panel in this other book, or that reminds me of this movie, or that's the exact same perspective of this other book. So, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of originality in this one so far. We'll see what they do. Going forward, these characters are going to come back. How they're going to come back, I don't know. What it's going to mean in the long term, no idea. Glad I jumped in on it, though, because it's just fun to kind of be on these DC events and hear what everybody has to say about them. But yeah, I would check it out if you're a Crisis person. If you're not, you might be a little bit confused, but they do kind of walk you through this issue. It's not necessarily a bad new reader book, but it does help to have a little bit of background on these characters and past events and things like that, but you won't be completely lost if you're new. And the last DC book we read this week was Rogues, issue number 2 from Joshua Williams, and I really do enjoy this book a lot. I like the idea of just these like old retired villains kind of getting back together for one last heist, and they got a really interesting target, which is Gorilla City. They're going to go after Grodd. They're going to steal all his gold, or try to. And it's just more about a book about their relationships. It takes its time. It kind of develops the story a little bit. It doesn't have a whole lot of action, but it's got a lot of comedy and wit, and it lets each character go into the story and breathe a little bit, which I did appreciate. The art is awesome. I do like that. It's got a little bit of a grittiness to it. It's pretty simplistic in its style, but I do like what I'm seeing. Drawn by Leo Max and Mateus Lopez and Jason Wordy. So I do like the art style in here. I'll give you a little glimpse of what you might be getting yourself into in case you're interested in this book. And it is pretty cool. I do like it a lot. There's a lot going on. It's not lazy. It's interesting. There's lots of good coloring, and you need it because some of the landscapes and some of the areas they go to warrant that. And so I do appreciate that. But again, this book takes time and actually lets scenes breathe. They let it develop. There's a lot of character interactions in this book. There's an interesting plan. There's a high stakes involved here, and they give you good reasons to be in this situation. So it's not like, it doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel rushed. And that's what I really enjoy about this book. It's like you actually care about these characters, even though they're villains. That's what I enjoy most about this book. Rogues issue number 2. I say it's a solid read. All right, so that's it for the big 2. We have plenty of indie books to work our way through. Next, we have the highly anticipated last issue of The Last Ronin. This is issue number 5, IDW. And man, I just met Kevin Eastman this past weekend over in the Huntsville Comic-Con. He's such an awesome dude. And I asked him, when's the next issue coming out? Because I completely forgot. And he said, very soon. He wasn't lying. It was like the next week it was out. So it was awesome. This book is going to be hard to review because the release schedule was awful for this book. It was like Doomsday Clock. It was like whatever other book it would take 5 times as long to get out. This should have been an every month book. There's only 5 issues. This book started, I believe, before last year. It took over a year to get 5 issues out. It's been like 3 or 4 months in between issues. It was very, very hard to keep the momentum, to keep the excitement going from issue to issue, to keep the story straight. But what I think we enjoyed the most about this, or what I enjoyed the most about it, was we got introduced to the concept way before this all got started, and it was like a heartfelt concept. It's like what happens when you're the last Ronin, when you're the last turtle, and the surprise about who it was, how it played out, how they actually did it, I thought was pretty rewarding. But again, that damn release schedule really screwed up the momentum of this book. And I think it has a big impact on how I enjoyed the final issue. I will say the final issue, it's a big battle issue, which is great. It didn't end super abruptly. It dragged on a little bit, which I thought was needed in the big finale kind of an issue. They built it up for so long. It did lack here and there. I think the length of the battle was fine, but maybe some of the components of the battle itself could have been explored a little bit more. The artwork was hit or miss here and there. I would say there is a lot of action scenes in here, lots of things going on in the paneling, or lots of things going on in the background. The coloring was fun. I did enjoy all that, but really a book like this needed to have a solid release schedule, and I'm not exactly sure what all went into that not being the case. I will say that if you probably read this as a trade, if you read it all back to back, it might make a lot more sense. It might read a whole lot better. But if you were someone who was reading it when it came out, issue to issue like myself, I would say you're probably going to feel the same way, that the schedule really jacked this one up. Again, the final battle was interesting. I felt like it was lacking something. I don't exactly know what's happening there or what it was exactly lacking, but I'd say overall it was pretty good. And the very last panel, big giant splash panel, does give me some hope about where a story like this could go in the future. There's some characters they introduce and they explain their origin, and so that's got me excited to see what else might come out of this creation. So that's got me excited. Last Ronin issue number 5 will read much better as a trade, I think, because then you would have at least all the issues right there in front of you and not have to wait like a year and a half just to get 5 issues of a book. All right, so that's it for IDW. We're going to jump over to AWA. We got a couple books from them, starting off with Hotel Volume 2, issue number 5, the conclusion of the Hotel Volume 2. And this is a great, great book. It has just enough connective tissue to the previous first volume, which I think everybody loved. I didn't meet a whole lot of people that didn't like that issue. Basically, you have this hotel that's in the middle of Route 66. It's not there all the time. It's like a ghostly possessed kind of a hotel. It goes over the origin of that possession a little bit here and there throughout this whole run. And then it's a story about the different travelers that find it, their issues with their families, with themselves, their obsessions, the grieving, the stuff that they're grieving about, things like that. And this hotel really, really plays around with all that and accentuates all that. And you have all these like hauntings and things like that. And you have all these Easter eggs that were established in Volume 1 that pop up here and there in Volume 2. So it's a fun book to really kind of sit down and digest and kind of pull it apart a little bit, because there is a lot of Easter eggs and things that they revisit in here. I think this book ended exactly how it should have ended. I wanted it to be something like this, where you have this other force to come in to test the strength of the hotel itself. And we definitely got that in this book. We had just enough characters come back into the series that we saw in the previous issues of this volume, as well as some surprise guys from the Volume 1. So I did like that a lot. The art is really good as well. It's a creepy book. I think it would be a great book to read around, in the fall holidays and whatnot. So I think that definitely this would be a great trade pickup, especially if they do Volume 1 and Volume 2. Since they're so very much connected, that would be awesome. I'm really happy with it. I think this is a great run. I think Volume 1 is outstanding. Volume 2 starts off and you're kind of like, well, how close is it going to be to Volume 1? I've learned all the tricks. I feel like I've learned all the tricks, but they do throw some curveballs in Volume 2. Very well done. Highly recommended. All right, another AWA book we got this week is The Fourth Man. This is, what is this? Issue number 4 of The Fourth Man, the fourth book of The Fourth Man. And this one's pretty cool. I do love the covers in this one. This one's a little bit hard to explain as well, but basically we have these rivaling car lot owners, and they're kind of like mobsters and gangsters. There's hits that are done, and the people they're hiring for the hits hire other people to do the hit for them because they're just not maybe equipped for it and things like that. There's a lot of double, triple agents going on here, a lot of backstabbing, a lot of double crossing, a lot of money changing hands here, a lot of backstabbing. It's been a really fun book. And then you have the cops trying to figure out all these different murders. So it's a little bit time jumpy here and there. There's a lot of overlap with who's doing what to who. And so they take their time in this issue, I've noticed, to kind of walk you through what's happened so far, because I think that the reader is going to be a little bit confused about where we are, but they do take a couple moments here and there throughout this run to kind of catch you back up. So it's like, well, so wait a minute, this guy was hired by him to do that, but then he did this instead and hired this other guy. They kind of walk you through that as their detectives kind of talk their way through their case they're trying to solve. So it's a really fun little detective story so far. I believe we have one more issue after this, and so I'm excited to see what's going on. We got introduced to the Fourth Man in this book, And so we're going to see what the confrontation between that person and the cops are, I think, in the next issue. I can't wait for it. Pretty cool little detective story. If you're into those things, I would check it out. All right, we're going to go over into Image Comics next. We're going to start off with a banger. We're starting off with Saga. This is issue number 58. We got the whole band here, and I just kind of got remembered that they call each other the instruments that they play, because there's moments in here where they call, like, that's guitar and that's whatever, right? And so that's drums or whatever it is. So it is pretty funny. So where are we going with Saga right now? Well, this is very much a Saga issue, and this issue right here is going to be that security issue, I think, where they introduce a little bit of conflict, but they spend a lot of time kind of pulling at your heartstrings a little bit. There's lots of reminiscing in this book. There's lots of talk about Marco and how he's being missed and everything like that. It's Elena trying to kind of move on, trying to do this task that she was sent on by these pirates that they were intercepted by. And so that's been pretty cool. This book has a really awesome splash page on here, which just reminds you of how great Fiona Staples is with the way that she draws things, how she's coloring, how she's changed since the beginning. It's like she kind of outlines a lot of her characters in this really bold black, and it works just so well. And it's complemented by the speech bubbles as well. So I do like how they kind of match over there. It's just a gorgeous book. You don't understand how she's able to do some of the things she does in here. But again, this book plays to humanity. It plays to past mistakes, past experiences. It's kind of letting you down a path right now, like, yeah, everything's fine, everything's safe, everything's cool. And then it has just this way of introducing conflict and making you just like scared for your life. And so that's what they always do in these Saga books, and it's really awesome to be on that roller coaster ride the whole time. I did love that about this book. And in this issue, they do explore some of the people that we had in the previous, several volumes of Saga, where they're going to be coming back. So it's really awesome. The investigation for where Hazel is, that abomination, that idea that they were trying to kill throughout the entire, last compendium or two. That's kind of going back on the table. That's now the main goal for the Wings again. And so they're trying to execute that plan that they originally started with, not just with Marco. They're continuing their search. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be epic. I cannot wait to get more into Saga. All right, the next book we have is from Image. We have Ghost Cage issue number 2. And this is a great example of taking what you know in issue number 1 and blowing it out of the water and expanding everything in the next issue. We basically have this corrupt guy who's running this major power plant that powers everything, presumably in the entire world, and the whole society is completely reliant on this. He's got his own personal problems that we explore towards the end. I have my assumptions about what he's actually doing, what his master plan is, but essentially he's trying to consolidate all these different power sources into one thing, and he's created this avatar to kind of defeat these different bosses in all these different levels. So you have wind. I'm assuming we're going to have some kind of solar. We have hydro, we had steam, we had coal, we had all these different power sources in an avatar form. Monstrous, gigantic, perspectives are awesome. The coloring is great because it's just black and white, and so everything just pops and everything's high contrast. And we have like these boss battles in every single floor that they go to, but it's not exactly evil power sources. They have their own demons. They have their own backgrounds and motivations. And they explore that a lot in this one. This book really introduces the emotion into here. Doyle, the little IT help guy that's with this little avatar trying to consume these powers, he's awesome. He's got his own arc going on right now, which I think is great. I do like that. We have this other character we were introduced previously, and we learn the identity of that character. Very impactful. Awesome. I can't wait to see more about that character either. This is just a really, really fun book. It is very long. It takes longer to read. I would think that this book takes maybe 2 to 3 times longer to read per issue than your average comic. And I wasn't even mad at it, especially with a stack like this week. I thought I'd be kind of like drowning in this book a little bit, but it's so fun. It's very heartfelt. The art's amazing. I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's not your typical book though. It's not your typical comic. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in here. I would definitely give it a try if you haven't already. And I would love to see like this whole collected edition and like a hardcover, just beautiful edition. I think that would be great. Maybe like an 11 by 17. That would be amazing. The next Image book we read this week was Step by Bloody Step. This is issue number 3 from Cy Spurrier. But most importantly, we have art by Matias Barguera and we have Mateus Lopez on the art, because this is a dialogue-less comic. There is no dialogue in here. It relies 100% on the art itself to help tell the story. I can't imagine what the process was for writing this. I'm sure there's a giant script. I'm sure there's perspective, there's intention, there's meaning behind every page. I would love to know the guiding process for this book for the art team from Sai. And yeah, that would be quite incredible thing to kind of digest. That would be awesome to have a collected edition with like notes and things like that, editor notes and whatnot. I would love to see that. So what's going on in the story? Well, the story is kind of up for interpretation a little bit. There's obviously a main objective to the story. We kind of start off with a little girl being rescued by this iron giant, who's got a body persona inside of it as well. Very overprotective, very stay away from the ledge. Don't talk to those people. Don't trust those people. But she's exploring. She's growing up. She's going out on her own. She's a little bit too trusting, perhaps. And people are trying to take advantage of her, trying to use her for their own means. And we have our guardian, we have our iron giant, always staying very close by, trying to be protective whenever they can. And all hell kind of breaks loose in this one. A little bit of betrayals, giant battles, infinite armies attacking everybody. Very, very, very cool. I do love everything about this one. I will say it does take a little longer to read because you really do need to look at the paneling and figure out what's going on and figure out what the intentions are and what the feeling is. It's not too hard, but there's certain moments here where I'm like, I don't know what they're going for on this page. And I feel like I need to know what's going on in this page. Otherwise, the page wouldn't exist. There's a meaning behind it. There's something here I'm missing. And that happens from time to time in this issue. But part of me thinks that that's inevitable because there is no dialogue and there's no way that anyone's going to understand everything that's going on in this book unless you're just a genius. And maybe I'm just too stupid from time to time, but I got the overall premise of this one. Absolutely gorgeous. I would recommend picking it up. But it's going to take a little bit longer to read this one just because of the nature of how it's designed and put together, but I think it's worth it. All right, we're going to go over into Boom Studios next. We're going to start off with Something is Killing the Children, issue number 22. Got that die-cut bloody version. Absolutely love these die-cut ones. Pretty cool. And they were able to keep the price in a reasonable range. So they got good paper quality. They got a die-cut cover. Really like that. $5 an issue. Not too bad, based on what you get right here. So there is that. So if you're interested in Erica Slaughter, you want to know more about what she's doing, how she's interacting with this new child we got introduced to, whose family was taken out in the previous issue, trying to unpack all that. We do explore that a little bit more in this issue. We also get introduced, though, to another house, the House of Cutter. The House of Cutter is interesting. It's explored in the first few pages of this one. And this new female character they introduced is a complete badass. I cannot wait to dive into more of that. She's really, really messed up, guys. She's really messed up, and I can't wait for them to explore that house. This is kind of what I wanted. I wanted just strong characters, interesting background, interesting stories. I wanted more houses to be explored, what they do for the different organizations and whatnot. And this one seems to be overseas. They're going to travel to America. And this house seems like it has many different roles, but one of them might be hunting ex-house members. So Erica might be on her hit list. That's going to be a very interesting confrontation there. It does go back and explore what happened in this small town with this little girl's family. And so we get a little more about that. You know, the local law enforcement is trying to unpack, trying to figure out what the heck actually went on with that over there. And Erica's getting more and more involved in here, which I do like. So this book is definitely heading in a direction that feels reminiscent of the first few arcs of Something is Killing the Children. And I love seeing more houses. I love them being interesting. And I can't wait to see what else happens in this one. And we get House of Slaughter Volume 2 very shortly, in a little bit. So I'm interested to see where that one goes as well. From what I understand, the new house or the new member they're going to be introducing is kind of like the bookkeepers, the storytellers, the loggers of what happens. So that might be kind of cool to see what kind of other juicy things we can learn about the other houses. Can't wait for that. Can't wait for a next issue of Something's Killing Children. All right, the next book from Boom Studios is Don't Blind Yourself. It is Berserker issue number 8 from Keanu Reeves and Matt Kindt. And another great issue of Berserker. I've been saying it. This is one of my favorite books I've read in a long time, especially in single issue. It's been going on since last year. It made my top 5 of 2021 video. You guys can go check out that video if you haven't already in the playlist. So where are we right now with Berserker? Essentially, Berserker, the Keanu Reeves character that's portrayed on the cover right here, he's a very, very ancient warrior that was born out of like a desperate last measure by these tribal people that were being invaded and taken advantage of. And he was born basically kind of like a Jesus type character. He's immortal. He's got amazing strength. He's got basically the Wolverine X Factor. He's got like the super healing. He basically cannot die. Even if you burn him to an ash, he will come back. And we have a governmental organization that's kind of, using him right now for different missions, and they're trying to duplicate his power. They're trying to provide him with some closure. He kind of wants to die. He's kind of like Wolverine in a way, where basically he's lived so long, he's pretty much done with everything. He doesn't really see the point of going on. He's done so many bad things in his life, and he's going to be okay when the time comes. But this agency is really trying to duplicate his power, trying to find the source of his power so they can kind of duplicate that and put it into other warriors to make like the ultimate army, because that's what people do. They find better and more efficient ways of killing each other. And this guy is kind of the key to all that. So we do explore that. We don't really know what's happening in the last issue, like the situation they put our character in. They do finish that out, and it kind of explains why they did what they did over there. But again, their main objective, find the ultimate source of power, duplicate it. So that's really a cool premise. I do like that a lot. We're going to get a little metaphysical, I think, in the next issue or two. We might get to a point where we're going to have some giant battle between him and some duplicates, some variants of him of himself. That's going to be pretty awesome, I think. Can't wait to see what happens next in Berserker issue number 9. All right, that's it for Boom Studios. We're going to jump over into Dark Horse Comics with We Have Demons issue number 2 from Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. And man, I am really enjoying what Scott Snyder's doing over in Nocterra, and I like what he's doing over in We Have Demons as well. They feel the same. The way they introduce characters, the way they have their dialogue, the stakes, the overall feeling and storytelling method, you can totally tell it's from Scott Snyder. I feel like I'm at this point now where if I was given about 10 different scripts and I read them and I had to identify Scott Snyder, I probably could, just based on what I've read so far in those other ones. These feel like the same kind of book, and that's not a bad thing. He's got a great way of introducing characters, making you feel for them, making it funny, making it impactful, kind of surprising you here and there. And Greg Capullo's art's awesome too in this book. He draws faces really well. He draws emotion and eyes really, really well. I do like that. There's a lot of grotesque, horrible things in this book. There's a lot of monsters and demons and things like that. And he draws them just gnarly, man. It's really, really cool. The composition, the layouts, the pages and everything, that's interesting. It seems to change here and there with like some overlapping panels with a lot of shadow. And then he kind of gets rid of the grid lines altogether and lets everything kind of blur together, which is interesting. I think it's pretty cool. They got a really interesting story over here. Basically, it's a bunch of demon hunters who had a lot of people in their ranks in the past. They slowly, dwindled down. It's kind of like passing on the legacy to your child, introducing her to the gang, and them taking on the mission that they were set off to do before this tragedy happened in this young girl's life. So I do like that a lot. Also in the back, it's pretty cool. You get those actual pages, those drawn pages as well from Capullo. So you get a breakdown of all those. So that is pretty interesting. Again, it's a really cool story. I do like the premise a lot. They introduced a little twist in the end of this one that didn't really jive with me, but we'll see if it's like a gotcha moment or anything like that, or maybe it wasn't all what it seems to be, kind of a moment in there. But this one was a cool origin story about the sidekick that her father has at the moment, and how he was found, how he was like reacclimated into the world and everything. And so I thought it was a great issue. I do like where it's going. So this book has been really, really fun. I'm actually really excited to keep going with this one, just as much as I am with Nocterra, going into issue, I think, number 10 pretty soon. But this one's a great read. If you haven't checked it out yet, I would do so. And if you have a Comixology subscription, look this one up, because I think it might be free on there. But if it's not, check it out at your shop. I think it's worth it. All right, and the last book we read was Vermillion from Behemoth Comics. I don't want to show it too long. It's pretty graphic cover in here. And I tell you what, I got about halfway through this book before I actually realized that a lot of the internal monologue that they explore in this book, that they have in this book, is actually the lyrics to Slipknot's Vermillion Part 1 and Part 2. Probably more Part 1, but they do reference some things from both songs in here. So if you want to get into the headspace for this book, go look up Slipknot's Vermillion Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1's like the heavy metal version. Part 2, they changed up the lyrics a little bit, and it's more of the acoustic version, but it still has really, really great sound, and it's awesome. So check that out before you read this, or maybe after, just to kind of get the vibe of the whole song and the comic all together. But what is this about? So it's a little bit up to debate. In the back of this, there's actually a writer's note. There's actually a note from the writer in here that goes over what his headspace was when he wrote this book. So I would recommend checking that out after you read this. It's kind of like it is what you need it to be, whatever you think it is. But if you do listen to the song and listen to some of the lyrics, it has a lot to do about maybe gaps or holes in your life, and you're kind of portraying the ultimate fix for all that nonsense that you have going on in you, you're unfairly portraying the fix for that on somebody else, maybe a female, and you get a little bit too obsessed with that, and you're thinking maybe if I can get closer to that object that you've created, all of a sudden you would kind of like fix or resolve all the things wrong with you. There's a lot of interpretations to this song. There's a little bit about possession and addiction and things like that. So it is kind of whatever you need it to be for you at the time. The book is extremely graphic. It is not kid-friendly at all. There's probably not a single page on this whole book that is kid-friendly, and you can just look at the cover and figure that out. But it's very powerful. It's very impactful. If you are familiar with the song itself, I think it's just like, it's the visual part. It's the visual representation of the song. It's awesome. I do love it a lot. Vermillion, I think it's only gonna be one issue. I would check it out, especially if you're familiar with those songs. And if you're just looking for something crazy and weird and kind of introspective, I would check this one out too. And then I would listen to the songs for sure. But I would check it out if you haven't. And there's an A cover and there's a B cover. B, I think, is a little bit more friendly. It's all black with the vermilion and white. And the A cover is a little bit more risque for sure, but check it out if you can. So guys, that's what I read this week, and that's what I thought about it. That is a lot of books, guys. So let me know down below in the comments what you read, what your favorite books were this week. If you have any clarifying thoughts or anything on the books that I read, maybe I had some questions, you have some answers, please let me know down below in the comments. But as always, I thank you very much for watching the video. Like, subscribe, share, hit that bell notification to be notified of future videos. We will see you guys down below in the comments.